There's traveling through Africa, and then there's the way you did it traveling. Why did you decide to do it on a bike?
I don't consider myself a cyclist. Maybe it was a bit naive of me, but at the same time, how hard can it be, you know?
Were there any moments that were quite scary where you were like, okay, cool, this could turn into a very dire situation?
People were shooting in the air every day. All the men in town wear an AK-47 on their shoulder. I remember exactly what I felt when I was there in the moment.
I believe you met someone who's responsible for quite a prominent internet meme.
Yeah.
How was that whole experience?
He's iconic.
How much can you trust the maps?
There was only just one road, and you have to face south, and that's it.
Yeah. Aim vaguely that direction.
That's it.
Figure it out.
Yeah. One of the very taboo topics that I've learned a lot about it in my journey across Africa is
Ladies and gentlemen, animals and aliens, welcome back to my podcast show. I'm very excited today to introduce Florence Ryan, who's my guest. Florence is a travel and adventure filmmaker, creating content that she shares on YouTube and Instagram. And Flo, you recently completed an epic 16-month journey across Africa from Cairo to Cape Town, titled Project Africa. I was fortunate enough to sit down with your adventure buddy, Rob, earlier in the week, and the more I hear about the trip, the more epic and inspiring it seems to sort of get. So thank you for joining me today. I know you've got a very busy last week in Cape Town before you head back.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt. This is very exciting I'm very happy to be here, and I'm excited to chat more about my life, my journey, I guess.
I want to dive back as a starting point, probably about 7 years old, because I was obviously checking out all your past videos and your different accounts and stuff, and I stumbled across one which I think is the first video on your YouTube account currently.
Oh god.
Currently your most viewed video.
Yeah.
It seems to be a Super Mario Acro Sport video.
Yeah.
Can you please tell me a little bit about that and what kind of stage of your life that came from?
That is so funny. I've actually never really spoken about this on camera. This is really interesting for some of my viewers, because I sometimes get comments about this. So yeah, that was in 2016. I was in high school, and I was in a French high school. And in the French system, you have to, there's part of your sports exams, you have to do gymnastics, and you have to do kind of like a gymnastics performance.
You have to do gymnastics.
Yeah. So we had to do gymnastics,
Okay.
but it's not gymnastics. It's acro sports. It's like acrobatics, but also not really gymnastics. And your presentation at the end is like a 3-minute, it's a 3-minute set where you do gymnastics, but also kind of choreography. And you have to have a theme. And our theme was Mario. And I was looking on YouTube for weeks and weeks before this performance that we had to do and looking for inspiration. And I saw nothing. There was no other good videos. Like, I was trying to see what other students are doing, trying to inspire myself, and there was nothing. And then me and my friends came up with this Mario thing. We got these suits tailored, these outfits tailored, and we did our thing.
You guys
we were
fully
so
kitted.
we took that seriously, and we did it. And then I was like, I'm just gonna post it to YouTube because it might help other kids, it might help other students. And I think for the first 2 years on YouTube, it got maybe 1,000 views. And it was very anonymous. I never really shared openly that I was posting it. I just posted it, forgot about it. And then all of a sudden, 1 year, like the third year, it just exploded. And it had like 100,000 views in a few weeks.
Was that when the Super Mario movie came out? The new one?
I don't think so. I
Not
think
even
it's
related to that?
no. I looked at the analytics on that video, and it's definitely a lot of students from France just looking for inspiration. And it's really funny because some of the comments are like, wow, like our teacher showed us this video saying this is what he's expecting. Little does he know he's not gonna get those results because this video is so good. Like the performance is so good, we're not gonna be able to do
so
that.
now every classroom in France is the reference video starting their assignment
yeah,
beginning
I know,
of the year.
it's so random, but yeah, it's so funny. But that was my first taster of you can put something out there and then it can help someone that you don't know on the other side of the planet.
Super interesting. I was so fascinated sort of seeing it and be like, how does this fit into...
Yeah, I've thought of taking it down a couple times because I feel like it doesn't really fit my channel now. But you know what? It helped like so many people, and now there's 1 million views on it, which is insane.
Absolutely crazy. I'm gonna jump a few years sort of ahead, and they're not publicly available on YouTube anymore, but they are available via your Pinterest account. All your university I'm going to call them vlogs, basically. So you studied at Durham University from what I can see.
Yeah.
And you basically created weekly vlogs of your experience throughout there, almost like it feels a bit like a video journal kind of sorts, which I thought was absolutely so amazing from a memory capturing sort of point of view. Is that kind of where you really dived into creating videos on a more regular basis, or what was kind of your thought pattern behind that?
Yeah, that's, first of all, it's like crazy that you went to my Pinterest to find these.
You've got to do the research.
But they're actually in a playlist that's unlisted on my YouTube channel. So if you go to my playlists, you can still access those videos.
I don't know YouTube worked like that.
Yeah, you can.
So you can have the playlist with unlisted videos?
The playlist is public, but the videos are unlisted, but they're in the public playlist. So anyway.
YouTube is confusing with the...
I know, but they're still available. So yeah, those videos were my uni vlogs, basically. I loved making videos since I was a kid, and I always made little home movies and montages. And when I was at university, I started documenting my life and just filming little clips here and there. And I started making these little weekly montages where I would film a bunch of clips throughout the week and put a song on and just make a little 2-3 minute video and post it on YouTube. And initially it was all private, entirely private. It was just me, my 5 friends, and my family would watch those. And then at one point, my mom kept asking me for the link. Oh, can you send me the link? I want to send it to my aunt or my friend. And I got sick of sending the links over and over. So I was like, okay, I'll just make it public. So I made it public, and I had maybe 50 views on those videos. I would post them every Sunday. 50 views, half of them were me and my friends. And then the other half were probably my family back home, just watching them over and over, like my parents. And yeah, then I just did that for a few years. And then I actually think I posted consistently like every Sunday for 2 years almost when I was at university during term time. And I documented everything, like the mundane stuff. I documented me, just a time lapse of me studying, to cleaning the kitchen with my friends, to going to events, to going to lectures, just the mundane. And in my final year of uni, in Freshers Week, I remember I was in a bar and these 2 girls walked up to me and they were like, hey, we watch your videos on YouTube. And just want to say, like, it's thanks to those videos that we're here today, because when we were looking for Durham University on YouTube, like trying to see what it looks like, we found your videos and it really appealed to us that you showed the mundane, and we will watch your videos during exams to motivate us to study. And now we're here. And I was like, whoa, that's so weird. Like a video that you post just for yourself and your friends can impact someone that you have no idea exists and positively impact them. And I thought that was amazing. I was like, wow, that's so cool. And yeah, those videos got a little more views by the time I left university. Some have like 1,000 views or whatever. And I never really thought about who those people are. But I guess there are other students that were looking for information or inspiration.
Such an awesome thing in a university sort of environment, because I know, like, because I studied at Stellenbosch University, and one of the things I did before I decided to go there was I just YouTubed every single thing I could find about the residence I was going to, about anything there. And there's so few resources sort of there that you don't really know what to expect. And you kind of arrive with kind of a nervous apprehension of, like, you know, what is this experience going to be like, which I know is sometimes a good thing. But I think it's amazing to see parts of that sort of documented. And I'm assuming that obviously in creating that content so regularly, you slowly kind of evolved your skill sets as a sort of filmmaker as well, bit by bit.
So those videos have no audio. It's almost just muted clips and then just a song that I was listening to a lot that week. But over time I started, like, now the videos that I do are very much focused on storytelling and a lot of very, very audio based. Like, in fact, I almost edit the audio before I edit the video.
You're exceptionally adept at now speaking to camera, but I imagine it's quite a shift kind of doing that. How did you kind of, what's helpful in learning the skill sets to be comfortable speaking on camera?
I think it's a lot of practice and also just not taking it so seriously, because for me, making videos is fun. It's like my hobby, and now it's become my job, but it's a hobby and it's supposed to be fun. And I always think of it as I'm talking to a friend on camera. or I'm talking to myself in the future. I'm just documenting what's happening. And also it's years and years of practice. So yeah, I think just like not really thinking about who's watching the video. Because initially that's what it was. I just made those videos for myself and my friends and my family. And little by little, more and more people started watching them that I didn't know. And actually it was only after university, my Instagram account was private until 2019 or 2020. It was only then that I started putting myself out there and sharing on my Instagram. Oh yeah, I make little YouTube videos. And a lot of people who followed me, I mean, I had like 300 followers, but people who followed me from school or from other places, like, oh, I didn't know you made videos. I was like, yeah, I do, I guess.
Was it kind of nerve-wracking opening that sort of private documentary that you have like for yourself and for your close friends and family up to sort of public scrutiny?
I think so, but not really, because it was so small. So I didn't really see the impact. It was just like, okay, now it's not just my close circle, it's like my wider circle can see. But I think, yeah, growing up, I was always kind of carefree in a way, and I didn't really care what people thought of me, and I wasn't really scared to put myself out there or express myself. I did a lot of theater growing up, so I'm a performer. I was performing a lot when I was a kid, so I was never really scared of putting myself out there. So yeah, maybe that helped me not really think about it too much and just put myself out there.
I want to slowly edge towards asking you more and more questions about the epic journey that you've sort of been on. And I know that you've got a very diverse background in terms of the places you've grown up in and the various languages you speak and everything like that. And I think you grew up as a teenager for a period in Senegal.
I did, yeah.
I want to be the classic naive South African, assuming the rest of Africa is all the same. But did growing up in that environment help prepare you in any way for your kind of trip through the rest of Africa?
Yeah, so I was in Senegal for my last 2 years of high school, and I loved it. And I think it did in a way where it just inspired me to come to Africa more, you know, because I was like, wow, like I love it so much here. And it's so interesting. There's so much to see and do. And it's only one country out of 52. I think 52 or 55, 54. I don't know exactly how many countries there are in Africa. But it just opened my eyes. And I was like, I want to see more of Africa. And it always stayed with me, this thought, this seed, I guess. But also because Senegalese people are very nice. They're very funny. They're very friendly, very happy, very energetic people. And I just thought if Africans are anything like Senegalese people, then I'm gonna have a great time. And I was right.
I've got a friend of mine. He's more of a DOP kind of cinematographer, and he recently completed a trip to Senegal as well, and really opened my eyes to kind of the types of people there. And it looks absolutely amazing. So it's definitely a part of the world that I'd love to go visit.
I would love to go back at some point. Yeah.
Have you? I'm going to say planned a trip, Project Africa Part 2, going to various other different spots?
Maybe in the future. But yeah, the world is such a big place and there's so many places to go and explore.
Why did you decide to do it on a bike? Because I mean, there's traveling through Africa and then there's the way you did it traveling like through Africa.
So I don't consider myself a cyclist. Even after cycling like 10,000 kilometers across Africa, I still to this day find it really difficult to identify as a cyclist because I never really grew up cycling. My first bike I had when I was 4 and I learned to ride a bike with it. And then my second bike is this one that you saw today.
You showed it to me downstairs. Yeah. It's so great to see something that is so part of your sort of story in the sort of flesh, and it's in such good condition.
Yeah, it's a really good quality bike. It's been through a lot and yeah, I love it. But that was my second bike ever. I didn't cycle growing up. It's not something that I did. You know, a lot of kids cycle to school or cycle on weekends. It wasn't part of my life at all. But I kind of just went into it with naive optimism. I think that's something that is a part of me, of my personality, is like naive optimism. I was just like, yeah, how hard can it be, you know? So I kind of went into it without training, without anything. And I was just like, yeah, why not? I like the appeal of cycling because it's, obviously human powered. So you but it's effort. You push yourself physically and mentally. But at the same time, it's not very invasive because, you know, a motorbike or a car, you arrive in a village, it's very loud. You make a statement like, I'm here. Whereas the cycle, you can just be very discreet in a way in some places, depending on the country. Sometimes, regardless of how discreet you want to be, you'll always be seen, especially by lots of kids that follow you around. But yeah, I think the bike is an amazing way to travel because you can do long distances, but still feel very present and really take everything in because you smell everything, you feel everything, you feel the cold. When it's raining, you can't hide from the rain, you're in the rain. So you really feel very, very present. And I love that about the bike.
I guess pros and cons to being exposed to the elements.
Yeah,
there.
For sure.
I read in an interview, you basically did a little mock Tour de France in your cycling preparation before heading off to Africa. What was, you cycled from Paris to
the Atlantic Ocean.
The Atlantic. And
to
did that open your eyes a little bit to what this adventure is going to be like?
Yeah. So the thing is, before I started this trip, I bought all my gear in August of 2022.
How did you go about deciding like what to prioritize gear-wise and what you actually
I just watched a lot of YouTube videos of other people, you know, recommending their gear. And I was like, okay, that looks good. And just added to my list, and I had a huge list of things I wanted to buy.
Were there any things that are like commonly recommended that turned out to be completely impractical and not useful, or all of them kind of like essential? Is there anything you threw away like after the first week?
Not really, because I was pretty good at selecting all the things, but there are things that I carry the whole way that I probably didn't need. But I use them like once or twice and it was worth it for those times. Like my hot water bottle. I have a hot water bottle and I used it, I think 5 times. But it gave me so much comfort in those moments. Like when we were climbing Kilimanjaro, I was super, super cold, freezing. And I was so happy at night to have my little hot water bottle.
I guess worst case, you can always just say, it was an extra way to store some water in case there's an absolute emergency.
I guess you could say that, yeah.
But I imagine like when you need it, like it must have been really nice.
Like some things you carry the whole way and you don't use it once. A lot of my medical kit, for example, I have one pannier that was full of medicine and needles and all kinds of medication. And whatever, first aid, most of it I didn't touch until even now. I still have everything. But you have to be prepared for the worst. And it's better to have everything with you and carry that extra weight than to be stranded in somewhere super remote and be in a situation where you need, you know, help and you don't have access to it. So
were there any moments that were quite scary where you were like, okay, cool, this could turn into a very dire situation?
Yes, there were a few moments, notably in, I would say, Ethiopia and Kenya, northern Kenya. We had an encounter with some bandits in northern Kenya on our first day in Kenya, actually. And in Ethiopia, there were a couple of moments where I also was on edge. There was civil unrest when we were there. And so people were shooting in the air every day, protesting. But also in general, when you walked around, especially in the Amhara region, which is in the north, all the men in town wear an AK-47 on their shoulder at all times.
It doesn't exactly incite a friendly conversation.
No, and safety either. But again, like I said, I went into this all with naive optimism. So I was like, yeah, like, it's not that bad. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, they're fine. They seem nice. So maybe it was a bit naive of me, but at the same time, I think this optimism helped in a way that we didn't attract any negative situations. And I have very good intuition of like, this feels safe, this doesn't feel safe. So when there was a situation where I was like, okay, we should leave, we left, which was the case for the bandits in northern Kenya. But it wasn't until actually Uganda, when I was in Uganda, I went to a shooting range for the first time with a friend, Hamid, and I shot a gun and an AK-47 for the first time and I cried. So
your first time shooting a gun was an AK-47?
It was like a handgun and then an AK-47 at a target.
Of fire.
Oh my God. I cried. I was shaking and I was so happy that I only did that when I was in Uganda after crossing all of Ethiopia and all of Kenya, where a lot of people have and carry guns. Because I think if I'd done that before, I would have been terrified.
Okay, so not going to sniper school after this.
No.
Oh wow.
No, I'm okay without guns.
Oh. Speaking of shooting, but more the friendly kind, obviously you have to take quite a bit of camera equipment with you.
I love that segue. Very nice.
Just, working the puns. I was chatting to Rob about this as well and asking him kind of what he found useful versus not too useful from an actual content capturing point of view. And I'm curious if you've got a different impression there. What did you take with you from a filmmaking perspective, and what do you found you used the most, and what was the most kind of the best way to actually capture authentic stories along the journey?
Yeah, I think we have a bit of a different setup. There's some things that I use more than he did. I guess my gear checklist is my Sony A7C with a wide angle lens. I have my phone. I have a microphone for my camera. I have a little DJI mic, wireless. Tripod. I have 2 tripods. I carried the Peak Design, like the big one. And then I had a little mini tripod. Super, super useful. And also... When
you say Peak Design, the big one, I assume you mean the compact
the aluminium tripod. One. Yeah. No, not the big ones.
I love how it's big for your
for my scope. Setup.
Like in terms of taking up space, huge, such an inconvenience.
Listen, every gram counts on the bike.
Compact tripod setups.
Yeah. No, every gram counts on the every gram counts on the bike. So you got to be as light as possible. And I think, did I have anything else? That's like my main gear, I would say. Yeah, for filming.
And did you find the sort of Sony camera setup easy and practical to capture things quickly and in the moment, or was it a bit more tricky to kind of hold things while on the bike? And, because your bike is quite a heavy setup, and I know you were explaining to me it's a little bit more balanced because the weight is a little bit lower, but it's still it's a big moving machine.
Yeah, it's tough to film with the camera while you're cycling. I have to admit. So most of the time when I'm filming on the bike, when I'm actually riding my bicycle, then I would film mostly with my iPhone. And a lot of, I think majority of my cycling shots are filmed on iPhone. But every time I was static, or every time I got off the bike, say I would stop by a fruit stand and film the ladies selling mangoes or whatever, then I would try to make the effort, whenever I had the energy to take my camera out and properly film it. Or if we had sit-down conversations with people, with families who hosted us, whatever, then I would take out my camera and my microphone, set it up, and start filming with that. So yeah, it's a lot more mental, I think, though, than practical. It's like you have to you're really tired because you're cycling 8 hours a day, and you still have to remember to take the camera out and film those moments. There was one part of the journey where my phone broke, my screen broke, it cracked. And so I didn't have a phone, I couldn't film. So actually that week I filmed a lot more with my camera, and it forced me to film with my camera. And I realized it's actually a lot more doable than I thought. So yeah.
I guess it's just hard. Kind of looking at the alternative options that you have in place. Like if you didn't have your phone, then cool.
Honestly, the best camera that you can use is the camera that you have. Whatever you have access to is the best gear that you have. And I think it shouldn't really be something to overthink.
Obviously, being in the middle parts of Africa, I don't imagine cameras are super commonplace and everyday items that are seen every single day. Is it kind of more challenging when you kind of whip out a camera in those environments, and then, people are obviously curious as to what the sort of thing is? Does that disrupt the authenticity of the moment a little bit, or was it kind of just, part and parcel of the journey?
I have my techniques to film in a discreet way and less intimidating way as well. Because you're right. A lot of people are not used to being on camera, or a lot of people haven't seen cameras before. Although most people have phones or know what a mobile phone is capable of doing and filming nowadays. But I have my technique. So a lot of the times I will look at the person in the eyes and I'll put the camera aside. So I will continue to make eye contact with them and then try to film at an angle where I'm not holding the camera up in front of my face. They're just looking at me. We're just having a conversation. And even if they're scared, I will tell them it's okay, forget the camera. Just look at me. Just talk to me. There's that. There's also my phone. I will like usually if I'm filming with my iPhone, I will just hold it like down, like at an angle.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the shots, it's not very cinematography. It's not super cinematic. But if you look at my YouTube videos, especially the early ones in Egypt, Sudan, a lot of the shots are very shaky and has that amateur look. It's because I am trying to really prioritize the authenticity of the moment and the interaction rather than a beautiful shot. And so I would rather put my phone down and hold it at an angle and have that connection with the person than shove it up their face.
No, but I think you absolutely nailed that in the way that you kind of portrayed the stories that you've published so far. Like if you want to see the most cinematic shot, we're going to watch the National Geographic documentary where they have a crew of 20 people there capturing the most, beautiful sort of angle. But if you want those raw, authentic moments, you can't get that if you've suddenly got 20 cameras there. It changes the way people interact with everything. So
I also am a huge fan of just setting up your tripod and letting it roll. Like I have the mini tripod. I just put my camera down and just see what happens, especially when there's a group setting where there's multiple people involved, because then you can pick up on a lot of things and they forget about it because it's in the corner. There's a thing called vérité in filmmaking. It's this sense of authenticity or truth, and it's hard to capture. I find often, but you almost want to be a fly on the wall when you're watching a video. Oh, for myself, when I'm watching a video back, I want to feel what it feels like for the person being there. So when I watch my videos back, I remember exactly what I felt when I was there in the moment. And that's my hope and my intention as well for viewers, is to kind of come with me on this journey and also understand what it was like for me. So a lot of the times I just, try to make it as discreet as possible when I'm filming.
Africa is obviously super diverse, both due to the sort of native cultures that have emerged in the regions and also the lingering effects of colonialism that on the different regions, especially from a language perspective. I imagine you encountered a lot of different cultural identities and languages and the way languages are used sort of there. How important were languages for you in interacting with the local people that you met?
I think language is the most important thing in order to communicate with someone. It's the easiest way to break a barrier is just greeting someone in their native language. So Egypt and Sudan, people spoke Arabic, and I speak a bit of Arabic, having grown up in Saudi, and I also took lessons when I was younger. Rob is Lebanese, so he speaks Arabic fluently, but the dialects are different in all the Arab countries. Regardless, we were able to communicate with people in Arabic, and that made it so beautiful. I had so many amazing, like, deep connections with locals, with Sudanese people, with Egyptians, just because as soon as you greet them and you say hello, or you greet them in their language, they already take their guard down and they're they welcome you and they're open to welcoming you. Going down the rest of the countries, a lot of the same applies, I guess. Language is, every time I got to a new country, I would always try to learn the basics. So I have a note on my phone for each language. And as I went through the country, I would just like write down, how do you say this like numbers 1 to 10, or how do you say food, water, like basic things to be able to communicate. In Ethiopia, people speak Amharic. They don't understand English or any other foreign language. And if you don't specifically ask for cold water and you say wuha kaskaza, if you don't say it in a perfect way, they won't understand what it means. So we had to learn to communicate and come down to, the locals level, which I think is totally fair. As we went down the rest of the African countries, it was a bit easier because Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, most people speak English and understand English. So it was easier to communicate. But I still love learning languages. Like, I love languages. I think it's the best way to connect with people.
You can speak quite a few.
Yeah.
From when we chatted.
Yeah. I grew up with a lot of languages at home, and I just love learning languages.
I am an absolute language novice in that I can speak English and a little bit of Afrikaans, but beyond that, my brain just can't, I really struggle picking things up and actually getting comfortable speaking anything. And I think I've become exceptionally self-conscious about my pronunciation the whole time, and that restricts me a lot. And privately I might look at the Duolingo app, but other than that, it's quite scary trying to go into a conversation with someone and feeling a little bit out of my depth and a bit embarrassed sometimes about trying to engage in a foreign sort of language.
Yeah.
Is that something you've experienced at all, or is it what kind of mindset do you approach that with to embrace a new language?
I think I just put myself in their shoes. If someone in Kenya, is just living their life, and then a cyclist comes along and tries to greet them in Swahili, mambo, poa, habari, nzuri, then they don't really care if you pronounce it right or not, So you shouldn't care as well. And that's kind of where I think maybe the growing up being a performer or making videos kind of helps, where I just don't really think about what the other person thinks. I'm just trying to be myself and communicate. Maybe that helps. But ultimately, you just have to be understood, because if you don't ask for what you want, then you're not going to get what you want. Like, you have to communicate in some way with the locals. But yeah, also body language helps a lot.
Yeah, because I guess so much of communication is not so much the verbal linguistics of what is actually said, but the way it's
body language is so important. A lot of times didn't even know how to say specific things, but like if a lady does this, that she's pregnant. There's like universal things that you don't need to be able to understand them to know what's going on. And that's the beauty, I think, of traveling in different places, different cultures and different languages. Is just, language is super important, but also you're able to connect with people that don't necessarily speak the same language.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I want to ask some questions about Egypt. Obviously,
yes.
I'm going to leave most of the run-ins with the law to your YouTube videos. I think that summarizes it pretty well. But obviously, the police were not too happy with you crossing Egypt.
Yeah.
But one thing that I found really interesting is you seem to struggle quite a bit with the dust or pollution along the journey.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't quite tell. Is that from all the rubbish that's being burnt, or is that just the dust along the highways there that makes traveling quite difficult?
Yeah, Egypt has really poor waste management, and people have bad habits, I guess, and just throw everything on the side of the streets or the roads. And even at home, people will burn all their rubbish at the end of the day. So I noticed that a lot, like the dust in the streets, the dust and the roads are very dusty and dirty, but also every day around sunset, people would burn like piles and piles and piles of rubbish and smoke in the air. It looks really beautiful with the sunset and everything.
Amazing sunsets.
But when you smell it, it's horrible. And yeah, there's a huge waste management crisis in Egypt, actually. Even in Cairo, it's just not maintained by the government. And so people have to find their own way to get rid of it. So they just burn it, which is understandable, but they don't know the consequences that it has on their health. And so I found it important to talk about it, because it's something that I observed, and I don't really want to just show the good sides of my journey, but also the negatives. And if it can spark conversations, then I'm happy that I could contribute in a way. Egyptians are not always able to communicate openly and freely. There's a lot of problems with freedom of speech in Egypt. And I actually got so many messages from Egyptian viewers saying, thank you so much for speaking up about the police and how they treated you and these issues in our country, because we would go to jail if we spoke up about it. But because you're a foreigner, you kind of have this, this almost, you're like a joker card where you can get away with it and they will actually listen. And they did. But yeah, if I'm able to use storytelling to talk about issues like this, then that makes me happy.
Yeah, I guess the effects of globalization are kind of coming to the fore then, where everyone's suddenly consuming everything, but the infrastructure hasn't developed enough to be able to take care of it. And those issues are now compounding quite a bit. But it was just really interesting for me seeing that, because that's something that I wouldn't have even thought of.
Yeah, you don't really see that side when you look at videos about Egypt. You kind of only see the good parts and the touristy parts. which most tourists also see. But because we were going in very remote villages, crossing the entire country, we saw the real Egypt, and we saw the good and the bad. And yeah,
I'm really curious. Obviously, navigating through Africa, there's only so much Googling you can do.
Yeah.
How much can you trust the maps? And what maps did you actually use?
That's a good question. Google Maps, cannot trust it unless you're like in a big city.
Yes.
Like
obviously,
in Nairobi.
It's impossible to...
Yeah, actually, it's really funny because a lot of the times you see a restaurant in a little town in Uganda, and you go and you eat, and it's good food, but it will have 1 star on Google Maps. You're like, why does it have 1 star? People don't know how to write Google reviews, so they're gonna write like, "Oh, fantastic food, delicious, would highly recommend," but then it only put 1 star instead of 5.
Just because they're not used to those.
They don't know you have to click
systems.
the 5 stars. So Google Maps is not always very accurate. One app that I love that I use every single day is called iOverlander. And it's an overlander app. It's a lot of cyclists use it, and also people overlanding in cars, doing van life, etc. That was extremely useful, and I also contributed to it. It's basically, should I wait?
No, it's fine.
Okay, it's user contribute. Anyone can contribute, and whenever you are in a remote place or anywhere, you can add a restaurant, you can add a shop, you can add whatever it is, camping grounds. So that was extremely, extremely useful, especially in places where we didn't have any service. So in Sudan, had no service, and Google Maps doesn't have anything on it. So iOverlander was really helpful because I knew then, okay, there's 100 kilometers before I can find water again, because someone had pinned it in iOverlander. And yeah, that saved us a lot of time. So shout out to iOverlander.
Were there any things that people had pinned that when you got there weren't there anymore?
Yeah, but usually it says.
Okay.
It says like the last visit was on this date, and then now it's been marked as closed. So sometimes it is, but then I would contribute and say, okay, it's not open anymore.
It's fantastic then that you can contribute and kind of lay out a marker for...
I also use maps.me. It's like offline maps basically. And I use it sometimes. But most of the time, there was only just one road, and you have to face south, and that's it.
Aim vaguely that direction.
That's
and
it.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess because you weren't under specific like exact time constraints mostly, kind of takes a lot of the pressure of, okay, taking a slightly off the beaten path is not a bad thing. One thing I would have been exceptionally nervous about, and I don't know if you were nervous about it, is basically funding the whole trip as you sort of went along, and mixing in monetizing your content kind of as you go along, and sustaining this sort of journey. What did you do, and how did you sort of make everything work?
That's a good question. I get a lot of people asking me about this actually. So I worked as a freelancer before this, and I kind of saved up some money that way. And I invested in my bike. I bought my gear. I bought my electronics, my hard drives, all that stuff. But I didn't have enough money to finish the trip when I started the trip, actually. I had about $2,000 in my bank account when I was in Egypt. And by the time I finished Egypt, I had like $1,000 left. And I was like really nervous about how I was going to do this journey. But I didn't want money to be an excuse to not start the journey. Because if I tell myself I need $10,000 or I need $20,000 to start a project, it would have been forever until I get that money. Who knows? For me, it was really difficult to save up that amount of money. So I was like, I need just enough to start, to leave, and just enough for a few months, and then I'll figure it out. And I just went with this mindset. And there were a lot of moments during the trip where I actually considered quitting just because I was running out of money, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to continue doing this. But I was able to make a bit of money as I went as well. So I had a bit of an income through YouTube and through my Patreon. Shout out to my Patreons, honestly. They're so patient with me. But also, living on a bicycle and traveling this way is way cheaper than living in a city or what I was, my lifestyle before this. So my costs per month were usually between $300 and $500. you're not paying for accommodation because I was sleeping in a tent. You're not paying for transportation, obviously, because I'm cycling. So my main expenses were, food and visas, and sometimes extra activities. So yeah, food was super cheap in Eastern Africa. Visa is the one thing that costs a bit more.
Are visas complicated to get going across Africa?
Depends, I guess, on what passport you have.
Okay.
And I'm very lucky. I have a French passport, and that made it way easier for me. So some visas were harder to get. Like the Sudan visa was a bit complicated. I got to the embassy and they were like, "Oh, we don't have stickers." So we had to wait for another week until they got stickers again delivered.
That for me is quite absurd. Like,
yeah, it was kind of chaotic.
Just to expect like a full-on week of waiting just for stickers to arrive to finish a bureaucratic process.
But the rest of the countries was pretty pain-free. It was usually online visa or visa on arrival. But I do acknowledge that I'm also very lucky to have a European passport. I think it wouldn't be that easy for everyone.
I see when you went, I think it was Ethiopia, you had to pay a deposit to get your bikes in.
Oh yeah.
Why?
Ethiopia.
Was there any reasoning behind that?
I think it's like an import tax on vehicles.
They're worried you're going to sell your bike?
They think that, I think they must have had issues before where people drive in with cars and try to sell them and don't pay taxes on them or something. So they make you pay a deposit. And then when you leave the country, you can get the money back. But it's a scam because they take it at the official bank rate. And so you pay, it's a bit complicated. But anyway, we paid like $200 at the entrance when we entered Ethiopia. And then by the time we left, we only left with half the money because of the exchange rate. And it was a nightmare to do that as well. We spent 2 nights at the border, leaving Ethiopia just to get that paperwork done.
Are they kind of just hoping that most people just don't want to go through the hassles and just kind of leave it?
Yeah.
That's
But I'm very stubborn. I'm going to get my money back. Yeah.
Okay, no, fantastic. And I don't know how you sort of feel about it, but obviously your journey in Sudan, it's been amazing seeing some of your content, some of Rob's content about that area of the world, because it's so fascinating for me and I've been blissfully naive to that entire sort of history. And I know when you guys left, obviously it's been quite a turbulent time there ever since. Was it difficult kind of having that emotional sort of attachment to a place and then having, war essentially breaking out there moments after you depart?
Yeah. Wow. Sudan, it really breaks my heart what's happening there, because we left Sudan on the 5th of April of 2023 and the war broke out on the 15th. So we were in Ethiopia and we didn't have service while we were in Sudan. So we didn't really post anything, no internet. So once we were in Ethiopia, we started posting Sudan videos on Instagram and like reels and stuff. And as soon as we started posting, we started getting messages like, wait, there's a war that's starting in Sudan. We're like, what? So we go on the news and we check it out and the airport had been blown up. And we're like, oh my gosh, what's happening? It was so surreal because no one really saw it coming. Like we didn't see it coming. We were in Sudan for 2 months. And it was so peaceful.
Did any people that you met kind of give hints that tension was
there
really
were
rising?
protests happening here and there, but locals also didn't think, because there was a revolution a few years ago and things had calmed down, and people did not see it coming the way it happened, because it's not a civil war. It's just 2 leaders fighting each other. Like the people have nothing to do with this war. They're just suffering. They're the victims. And so it was really heartbreaking. But at the same time, I did feel helpless a lot of times. And until today, I feel helpless. But I guess my way of contributing is maybe through, giving hope and telling people about Sudan and what it was like for me. Because we were probably the last visitors to be there in times of peace. And I was able to capture a lot of amazing moments in Sudan. Like Sudanese people are the most hospitable people I've ever met. And I will always look back and be very grateful for them. And I want to share that and just show people, Sudan is amazing. And it's really sad to see what's happening. So I guess humanizing it and showing what it was like maybe gives hope to the Sudanese to keep fighting and to, hang on. but also show the rest of the world, like this country is so underrated. No one really knew about it. I didn't know about it before going there, but it's so beautiful and there's so much there. So we should care about it.
I think that's a beautiful way of phrasing a very unfortunate kind of situation there. I'm going to switch to a lighter topic from Sudan, which I found really interesting from your videos, how they store water.
Yeah.
Can you walk me through exactly? I just see these like clay pot kind of things.
This is incredible. One of my most interesting discoveries on this whole journey is how Sudanese people store water. So obviously Sudan is in a desert. It's in the Sahara Desert, on the edge of the Sahara. It's very hot. Got up to like 47 degrees some days where we were cycling. And there's no water in the desert. Well, for the most part. There's obviously the Nile that crosses the whole country.
But the rest of it is pretty
But the rest of it is desert. Yeah. And the way that they store and filter water is so fascinating. So they have these clay pots that they build and they have little pores in them, I guess. Mm-hmm. They put water in it and it filters the water and it keeps it clean and cold. It's really, really cold. So and they're everywhere. So
they pour the water into the pots.
Yeah.
Okay. So how would that filter it exactly?
I don't know.
Then? Okay.
It's like something in the clay. Maybe the clay absorbs it.
So the clay is kind of just drawing things out of the water.
And I mean, we always still filtered our water anyway, just to be extra cautious.
Yeah.
But it just kept the water cold. And I think because water is so important and they know how important it is for survival, they make it accessible for anyone to help each other. So every village you go to, you'll see these little stands where there's clay pots with water for anyone to just take for free at any time. And that's how we would stock up on water. When we would cycle 100 kilometers across the desert, find a little village, we would find those clay pots, filter our water and put it in our water bags. And it's always ice cold and it's so nice. Usually there's no one even standing around. It's just...
So they set it up like just for communities to kind of... That is so cool.
Yeah.
That is the most
because they don't have
thing.
wells, obviously. They can't really build wells. I don't know if there's any water reservoirs underground, but they just take water from the Nile or from whatever sources they have and put them in there.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful.
I love those pots. Yeah.
Okay. I want to shift on to Uganda. And more specifically, I believe you met someone who's responsible for quite a prominent internet meme while you guys were there.
Yeah.
What meme exactly was it, and how was that whole experience?
Why are you gay?
The pronunciation is...
Who says I'm gay?
I think anyone who hasn't seen that part of the internet has just been born after that time, but I think it was pretty globally relevant for a stage. Is it weird kind of meeting someone who's just so like something that just went across the entire sort of world, and then like seeing the person sort of responsible for that?
Iconic. Yeah. It's pretty surreal because you never really think about those memes as real people. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's just a meme on the internet.
It's not a person sort of behind that.
But they have a whole story and a, background and a whole life. So it was pretty surreal. But at the same time, they're just people. So it was really cool to just have conversations.
Is Uganda still so, I'm going to say, very homophobic in certain senses?
Yeah. So that's one of the big problems in Uganda is the LGBT rights. And if you just look up on Google, Uganda LGBT, you'll see there's a lot of problems and people go to jail.
Is it a largely religious-based thing there, or is it more deeply cultural?
I think
entrenched?
I think it's mainly religious. I mean, culturally, I spoke to some people and they said like their grandfathers or great grandfathers or grandfathers' generation would not really care about LGBT people. Like everyone is free to be whoever they want. But I think it's more recent, maybe with religion, with the internet and being able to, share messages with a lot of people very easily. Also, I mean, it's unfortunate because in Uganda, there's been a lot of problems with AIDS and HIV. And so I guess it's an excuse for certain people who are very passionate about this to say, like being gay is not good, or they're very homophobic people. There are very homophobic people out there, and they use social media and they use general media to share these like really negative messages, and we kind of make fun of it. Like we see this meme as like a funny video online, but there are real people suffering. And suffering under a really nasty regime, I guess. I don't know how much I should talk about politics, to be honest.
It's a difficult thing
it's
to go into.
a lot of things going on there. But it's just interesting to be able to meet these people in real life and have conversations about taboo topics.
Yeah. I think it's important to keep those kind of conversations running where you can.
One of the very taboo topics that I haven't actually documented much, but I've learned a lot about it in my journey across Africa. And I would love to work on this in the future, maybe do a documentary or just go into that field a bit more, is FGM, female genital mutilation. Mm-hmm. And it is a huge topic and it's very, very taboo. And basically a lot of girls and women in Northern and Eastern Africa and other parts of the world also suffer from FGM. And it's just horrible, the stories that you hear about it and the numbers as well. When I was in Sudan, I would see girls walking home from school sometimes. And I would look at the group of girls, like 10 girls, 8 or 9 of them suffer from or have suffered from FGM. And no one speaks about it and no one educates them. Or there are people who educate them, but they don't have a voice strong enough to make a change. And it's a huge problem. So that's one of the taboo topics, very taboo topics that I would love to work or help tackle in the future. I think storytelling is a very powerful tool to change people's minds and educate people as well.
Are the girls in those communities that you met kind of aware of I'm going to say the rest of the world's viewpoint on everything, or are they so tied into the communities that they live within that it's kind of just accepted?
Idea. People have no idea and they just accept it as the status quo because that's what has been done for generations and that's what their fathers tell them. And a lot of, those communities are very, very patriarchal in that way, where it's like whatever the father says goes. And they just accept it the way they don't question, why do we do this? Is this actually right? Is it actually true that it's better for your health or hygiene or whatever? But I think it's a huge lack of education. And there are NGOs and there are women going around, and I've seen a few documentaries about this as well, going around and educating girls and women and men, like the village leaders, about why you should stop, FGM. But it's going to take time. It's a generational change. And I hope that with social media and the internet, it can come by quicker.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of the reason why the types of stories that you are putting together and showcasing in these parts of the world, so that the rest of us can get a viewpoint into the rich historical nuances in these environments, but also so that people there can also start, getting a broader perspective as well. So I think it's remarkable what you're doing, and
Thank you.
I'm really grateful to the work that you're putting in to showcase these stories to everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it's as much as it's a fun adventure for me, it's really also all about the stories.
Do you now feel burdened with responsibility at all? Were you able to kind of keep the
Yes
light-hearted
and no.
nature about
The thing
things?
is, I'm a very curious person and I love learning for myself. So these are things that I would have wanted to learn, and I love sharing what I learned. So that's the way that I'm doing it now, is through, videos. And I share whatever I learn in the best way that I can, but also I don't put too much pressure on myself, because at the end of the day, I'm not a journalist. I'm not, I don't know, a scientist or a researcher. There's only so much I can do. But yeah, bringing to light these topics and just sharing what I learned from my perspective is the way that I'm doing at the moment. It's hard when you have a platform to know what to share, specifically about conflicts and stuff. Like Sudan, there's a war going on at the moment. Actually, this week there's been protests in Kenya, and people are protesting, and there's people, getting injured and dying and stuff. And I care a lot about Kenya. I care a lot about Sudan, but at the end of the day, I'm not a news source. And so as much as I feel for my friends and the people that I met there, I want to focus on what I'm good at and what I love doing, which is stories. And hopefully my stories create empathy and create curiosity towards others, and ultimately bridge humanity together in a way.
No, I think they definitely do that. So you can give yourself a lot of credit in that regard.
Thank you.
I want to shift more to your sort of mindset along the journey. I can imagine it must have been incredibly tough at certain moments traveling through these environments. I'm going to put a selfish lens on this, in that I'm someone who thrives in sort of routine and having my sort of baseline there. When you're obviously traveling across a continent in very rugged and turbulent conditions, that kind of goes out the window to a large extent. And that nomadic lifestyle that you embrace, I'm sure comes with certain challenges. What were really sort of tough moments for you in that? And how did you kind of stay grounded and keep your sort of mental state in an optimal sort of condition when things were a bit all over the show?
I mean, there's two different kinds of challenges. There's like the purely physical challenge, and then there's the mental challenge. Physical would be, for example, in Ethiopia when we were climbing insane mountains, cycling up insane mountains, a lot of elevation gain in one day, or in Sudan or in Namibia, in Botswana when it was very, very hot and we had to do very long distances on the bike. Like, it was physically very, very tough. And then mentally, it would be more, the stress of being on the road, or mental exhaustion or emotional exhaustion because of all the ups and downs, or, problems that arise. I think, it is definitely tough, and there's challenges in every single day that you overcome. But I think there is also a sense of routine in every day, and that grounded me throughout the whole journey. So every day there's certain things that you do every day. Like every day I would, have breakfast or set up my tent in a specific way, or even at night when I would put up my tent, I had my little routine. I would put my bags on this side. I would put my sleeping bag on the left, and then I would prepare my clothes for the next morning. I would wipe my feet if I didn't have access to water. So I did have a little bit of a routine. It just looked very different to my normal routine. And also, I guess you spend a lot of time with yourself on the bike. So you learn to really become your own cheerleader. Most of the time I wasn't even cycling with my friends who joined us. Like, they would either be miles ahead of me or behind me, because we just go at our own pace. So you just spend hours and hours in silence. Sometimes I listen to podcasts, sometimes I listen to music, and that could help me, motivate me, or get through hard parts. But a lot of times you're just by yourself in silence, looking at everything, and also just introspecting and realizing that up until now, every hard moment that came in your life, you thought was going to be impossible to get through, and you got through it. So whatever the next challenge is, like, you're going to get through it as well. And doing hard things gave me the confidence to do more hard things. Because I think tough times definitely, they make you tougher. Ethiopia, the second day of Ethiopia, I will never forget it. It was the hardest, most physically challenging day of my life. We climbed, 1,700 meters of elevation with fully loaded bikes, and it was like a 15% incline. It was an insane day.
It's like a stage from Tour de France in the Pyrenees.
But I didn't know that it was coming. I went into it naively, and I was like, we'll just cycle 30 kilometers. How hard can it be? And it was 30 kilometers like this, and I was dead. I was so tired. And after that, I knew, not to push myself in that way, or Rob and I both knew. But now, every time I'm facing a challenge or something physically tough, I'm like, it can't be as bad as the second day of Ethiopia, Same with climbing mountains. Like, we climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, we climbed the Rwenzori Mountains in Uganda, and those were very tough challenges physically, because you're climbing at 5,000 meters above sea level, very low oxygen levels, it's freezing cold. But then you just know, I've done hard things, I can do hard things. And it just gives you the confidence to keep going. So
I guess you kind of explore the limits of where you're sort of at. And then once you raise those limits, then all of a sudden your perspective on what you can do is at that sort of reference point. I like that way of phrasing a lot.
But I think you find that in day-to-day life as well. I think one thing that I've done since I've been in Cape Town here for the last 2 months is finding this routine as well, but still doing things that are tough mentally, like taking cold showers or swimming in the ocean. It's really cold and I really don't want to do it.
For those
and I stand there.
Yeah, for those who don't know the Cape Town Ocean, it looks absolutely beautiful, but it is quite chilly.
We're very far south. We're like basically at the South Pole. But yeah, the water is freezing cold and it's winter here. So you just look at the,
Do you know the water is actually warmer here in winter than it is in summer?
Because of the currents or what?
Yeah, the currents change.
That's interesting.
I know obviously the outside environment then doesn't really help warm you up, but it's you're not here at the coldest part.
No, but you look at the water, you're like, no, why would I do this? It's so cold. And then you just go in and you push through those first minutes and then it feels amazing. And it's so good for you, by the way, health-wise. But then you come out and you're like, I did that. Like I was able to overcome this mental block that I had. Like I didn't want to do this and I did it anyway. And then the rest of the day, you're ready to face other challenges. So I think like doing things that are tough that you don't want to do in some ways can be a really good thing.
Tell me a bit about Kilimanjaro, because that sounds incredible. While you were traveling there, what was that whole experience like? And I think when we met in the coffee shop, you were telling me that you brought quite a few people with you to do that as well. It wasn't just you and Rob and the immediate travelers.
Kilimanjaro was my first proper mountain, I would say. It's the roof of Africa. It's a magical place.
The roof of Africa. I like that. Never heard that said before.
Yeah, it's the highest mountain in Africa. I don't remember how high it is. It's like...
very high.
Very tall. Very, very tall. And what happened was we brought together a group of, I think we ended up being 8 or 9 climbers.
Is that like a typical sort of group for it? Or
yeah. So you can do it by yourself.
These things have like, I'm going to say, tour sizes that are typical.
So Kilimanjaro is a mountain that you can do by yourself or with one other person. You can also do it in a bigger group, 10 people, 15 people. I highly recommend doing it in a group because that's just what made it so special, is like being with, sharing those moments with people. And we opened up the trek to people on social media and just posted to our stories. Like if anyone wants to come on those dates, we're climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, message me. And I had 2 friends that came that I knew or knew of. One of them was a friend from university and the rest of people were all strangers, but we just met briefly on social media, did a quick WhatsApp call. Cool. Sounds like a good person. Come join.
It's kind of wild to like meet someone on a WhatsApp call and then decide, okay, cool, you're going to go do a
and
really
it's a big commitment because it's a lot of money and you have to fly all the way to Tanzania and spend 7 days with those people, and they see you in very vulnerable moments because you're freezing cold, you're tired, you're exhausted, you're crying, have altitude sickness. But I think that really brings you together.
Did you suffer from altitude sickness?
Yeah, altitude sickness. I had pretty bad headaches. So I started taking Diamox on the 2nd, 3rd day. It helped a little bit, but really, really bad headaches.
What does Diamoxin do to alleviate the
I'm not exactly
symptoms?
sure of the science it does, but I think it kind of tricks your brain into thinking you have more oxygen in your blood. So it doesn't, it takes I don't know. Okay. Don't quote me on this, but it helps. Right. But it also makes you, can dehydrate you. And it also makes, there's this really weird feeling with Diamox. It makes your ending, like your fingertips and your toes, what's the word for it?
Like tingle.
Like tingle so much all the time. And like your lips tingle and like your fingertips tingle the whole time. It's like you have pins and needles in your fingertips the whole time. It's a bit uncomfortable, but then it's working. Kilimanjaro was like amazing. We just like hiked up for 5 days, and then it was the first time that I did a summit push like that, where you wake up at midnight, or you don't really sleep much at that altitude. You wake up at midnight, it's freezing cold, and you go out and it's dark, and then you see a trail of lights going up the mountain of other people already started to climb. And then you just like walk, and you walk so slowly, like 1 foot in front of the other. Pole pole, that's how they call it. Slowly. And it's just 1 foot in front of the other, very, very slowly, because you don't have oxygen. Like there's no oxygen up there. Everything takes so much more effort, and you're freezing cold. It was, I think, -20 degrees with the wind. But then you keep going like so many times, like, oh, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? I should be in bed. And then you get to the top and you're the highest people in Africa at that point. And it's the most magical sunrise and it's all worth it. And it's amazing.
That is very scary and absolutely wonderful.
It's scary, but also it's doable. And the porters help you a lot. So our guides and porters are basically, it's thanks to them that we made it up the mountain. They carried all our gear and our stuff. Like we had little backpacks and day bags, but all the gear they carry up, and they're the real heroes and the real like inspiring people on the mountain.
No, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You're the first person I've actually met who's done a serious like mountaineering sort of expedition. So I've always had a question, which I've never Googled it for some reason, but what's the trip down like?
Oh, the trip down. That no one really talks about that.
It's the same distance as getting up.
It is. Well, it's way faster, first of all, because the thing is, because of the altitude, you can't go up so quickly because you have to go, you hike, they call it, you hike high, climb high and sleep low. So every day you will, on the journey up to the top, you kind of hike up and then you go back down a little bit and you camp there and then you go back up and you camp down. So your body adjusts to the altitude. But coming down is you want to go down as fast as possible. And it feels like a breath of fresh air as you go down as well. I think it took us 2 days to come down.
I can imagine you feel stronger
No, because by then you're exhausted.
Okay. I was hoping you're like, okay,
but
yes.
maybe
like,
afterwards, yeah.
Like taking
afterwards
steroids as you go down.
Yeah. Afterwards for sure. There's people who train like on high altitude and then they do other feats afterwards because it really does make you stronger. But you're so tired and I was sick after Kilimanjaro, unfortunately. No, but yeah, coming down, it's tough on your knees as well. Like no one really speaks about it. It's true. But yeah.
Okay. Thank you for answering my curiosity in that domain. Traveling, like you said, there are a lot of emotional highs and lows. And it did test you definitely as a person, but I'm sure it tests the relationship you have with other people as well. How did you best sort of manage any points of conflict that inevitably would arise on such a long journey with, the same intimate sort of group of people or two people every now and then?
I think understanding that a lot of the times we're hangry. Everyone's hangry.
Just need a Snickers.
Everyone is hungry and tired all the time. So just that puts things into perspective a lot. But also, yeah, I think you get to know someone when you go through tough times and challenging times very, very well. You know how they react. You know how you react. You learn so much about yourself and others. And so there is like a sense of intimacy, I guess, in that way where you learn to trust the other person. They see you in very vulnerable moments and you see them in very vulnerable moments. So there's obviously a lot of trust that's necessary, but also remembering ultimately we have the same goal and the same intentions. And yeah, just like finding little ways to help each other. So I will remember forever Sharif, our friend who was with us in Egypt. He was the snack king. And he had so many snacks everywhere, stashed in his bag and his bike bags or whatever. And every now and then we would cycle and he would see the mood dip or just the energy levels dip in the group. And he would sneak up next to us and like hand us a little bar or hand us an orange or some food. So yeah, eating a lot is very, very important. And I think, doing little things like that, acts of service, helping each other, helps keep the whole group going. I'd say that.
I like that. And I love how you brought in those small little things.
It's all about the little things. It really is. Also, communication is so important. And also just time alone, because you spend a lot of time with people, all day almost. But actually not, if you think about it, a lot of the times I was cycling, I would cycle by myself, You just spend time alone, listening to podcasts, listening to music.
You feel like you learned a lot about yourself in those intense, long moments alone? Yeah,
I think so. And I think more than learning, it really reaffirmed a lot of things that I already thought I knew or that I knew about myself, like personality traits or confidence-wise. Like I really trust myself and I trust my intuition. And you have to become your own cheerleader. So spending this much time just by myself on the bike going through tough moments, it really reinforces that relationship with yourself. But I did learn, so much. I could write a book about it, honestly.
I'm sure it will come one day.
Yeah, maybe.
Your current way of telling stories is through your filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if there have been any major inspirations from other creators that have informed your own sort of style, or how you've gone about sort of developing that.
Ooh, that's a very good question. So I grew up watching YouTube, and I have a lot of creators that I used to watch growing up, and even until now, that inspired me. Friends of mine that it's inspired me as well. There was some creators I used to watch back in the day, like Fun for Louis. He was a vlogger, and he vlogged like every single day for I don't know how many, like 500 days or something crazy like that. I liked the authenticity of how it felt of those vlogs. So I guess I maybe took a little bit of that. I have my friends at Yes Theory. They're really good at telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I picked up bits of their videos because I watched them a lot. Just like so many creators. I guess you just pick like things that you like, maybe subconsciously, and make it your own in a way. I have a friend, Kariza. She's really good cinematographer. She does like a very cinematic vlog on YouTube, and she inspires me a lot more to be very conscious about shooting and trying to make things look more beautiful.
What have you learned from creators like that, and specifically the ones that you've met kind of in person, about what it takes to make it as a sort of content creator, as a career trajectory path?
That it is possible. I mean, that's the number one thing, is like you see other people doing it. So you're like, okay, it's possible. But also it's a lonely thing to be a creator sometimes.
Very lonely.
Yeah.
Like hours and hours that everyone has to spend editing.
And no one sees that. People only see what you share, and they only see you having fun with your friends outside or going on adventures. But people don't see 90% of your time you're just by yourself with headphones editing. And your fingers go numb from editing, and your back is like, actually, I need to fix my posture. People don't see that. And it can be a very lonely process, but I am so grateful for my friends who are also creators that I connected with and I met. I always reach out to people. I love reaching out to people, just like cold DMing people. Hey, let's do this. Hey, let's do that. You have nothing to lose, and you might make a friend out of that interaction. And so, I have so many friends now that are creators, and we can chat about our problems. We can, hold each other accountable. We can ask for advice. Like I have friends, I literally just like message them like, hey, which thumbnail do you think is better? Or can you check my script? Or what can I do things better? Or give feedback on a video. So I'm very, very grateful for my creative friends that I've made over the years. Super, super important. Yeah. Helping each other.
Obviously your YouTube videos are very lengthy, and I can imagine, like you're saying, the post-production side of that takes a significant amount of time. And your last upload was quite a while ago now. Obviously you've had to finish the bulk of your trip and everything. At what point did you kind of decide, look, editing super intensely on the journey isn't really something that you can sort of maintain? Or what was the decision-making process there around how you want to schedule things?
For me, I think it was about Uganda. So it was in November last year. I decided, I think that's when I posted my last video, when I was in Sudan, the last video that I posted. I just realized it was so time consuming. I would have to stay for a month in a city to edit a video because it just takes so much time. Not just editing, but when you're resting, you're not really resting. Like I was also running errands, getting my bike fixed, doing medical checkups, also filming stuff within the city. Like there's so much going on when you're resting.
Yeah, just going on that journey is tough.
That in itself, yeah. So I made that shift in Uganda, and I decided to just continue enjoying the journey as much as possible and documenting it and be very, very present. And obviously I edited a bit on the side. Like I edited whenever I could for Instagram and for, more short
your
form
short
stuff.
form content has been pumping the whole way
I've been
through.
doing a lot of short form content because it's a lot easier for me and I don't really think about it too much. My YouTube videos, I care so much about them and I love making them. So I was like, I just decided I'm going to get to that later. And it's also going to help me process this whole journey because so much happens every day that it's almost hard to assimilate. You move on to the next day and to the next thing that you have to do and the next thing and it goes on. And then being able to watch the footage back and putting these stories together, now I'm realizing, wow, like it's pretty crazy all the things that happened and it's helping me process them and process all those emotions.
No, that is really incredible. And now that you're back, well, not back, but you've arrived in your sort of destination, how much content do you actually have to go through? Like for someone who's very naive, going on a journey like this, how many terabytes of actual footage did you kind of accumulate while you were going? Like what's the numbers?
Yeah, so terabytes is not that much actually. I think it's like close to 20 terabytes because a lot of the footage is iPhone footage, so that doesn't take up so much space. But it's more hours of footage. It's like hours and hours of footage.
Okay. Especially like you were saying.
It's a year and a half long journey.
And you were saying you like to, sometimes set the camera up just to record those authentic sort of moments. That's hours sometimes.
So it's like 3-4 hours of footage a day sometimes.
A day?
Sometimes, yeah.
Wow.
Sometimes more, sometimes less. But on average, I would say that amount. And yeah, like I think I probably have enough to make, I'm probably going to be making 30 videos on YouTube, standalone videos that are going to be 20 to 30 minutes long. That's 20 to 30 minutes. That's the final product.
That is mega.
The timeline starts with maybe 10 hours or maybe 20 hours of footage. Yeah, no. So yeah, it's a lot of footage to go through.
For anyone who hasn't created an in-depth YouTube video or the ways that you do, that is an exceptional undertaking just to produce one of those, never mind.
Yeah, it's very, 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 very time consuming.
Do you plan to edit out all of those yourself, or would you consider getting, a team in to kind of assist you with that?
I mean, for now, I'm doing everything by myself because I have no money to hire someone else. Mm-hmm. But the dream would be to have 1 or 2 people to work with, to bring these stories to life together. But right now I'm doing everything by myself. Yeah.
I've always wondered if you do get to the stage where you do bring in sort of a team to help you with something like this, like obviously there's creative input that's from you and you kind of oversee the whole sort of thing. But I think it would be exceptionally difficult to get them to portray the stories that only you really lived through. Like only you know the context of everything that you filmed and went through and how it was meant to be interpreted versus what it, looks like on screen.
For sure. And I think I've already thought about this a lot. And I think in that case, I already know, like whenever I speak to potential editors, I always say, I'm going to help you, help me. I'm not just going to dump this footage and you're going to figure it out. I'm going to help you, help me. So I'm going to already organize the timeline in a way where it makes sense for you to know. Like I'm going to already write down the points, the skeleton of the script, because it's all in my mind. I know like the stories of all my videos already in my head as I'm living it. And as I'm editing them, it's all in my head. And sometimes I write it out on paper as well. So knowing this and thinking about this is like, I'm going to try to communicate as easy as possible for them to help me, basically. That's obviously the main structure of the story. But then the rest of it, there's going to be a lot of creative freedom. It's kind of hard. I mean, I've never really worked with someone before, so it's kind of scary. And it's a very vulnerable thing to give your footage to someone where you're very...
Because it's raw. It's just
raw.
It's just what it was, and you've got to kind of craft.
It's me crying. It's me, laughing. It's everything. So it is kind of intimidating, to be honest. But I also am really excited to work on videos with other people that are passionate about it. I think it's amazing, and I also want to learn from others. Because like I said, I'm not the best in cinematography, or I'm maybe not the best in sound design or music, although I care a lot about music and actually edit a lot of my stuff based on audio and music. But But yeah, I would love to be able to collaborate with other friends of mine or creatives in the future. Like if I do another epic trip or an expedition, I will ask my cinematographer friend to come and help me film, and then I can learn from them and they can learn from me. Like it's amazing. It's a journey where I'm continuously learning. I'm so excited for that.
How do you keep all your content kind of safe along the journey? You mentioned sort of 20 terabytes. That's, you know, you get some big hard drives, but hard drives themselves are delicate things. And, you know, the risk compounds the more you kind of have stored, especially in an unpredictable sort of environment. What did you do to make sure that nothing went missing?
I have multiple hard drives. I have SSDs, but the main drives that I have where my footage is like the Transcend, like rugged ones.
What kind of size are each of the hard
4
drives?
4 terabytes each.
Okay. I think that's a nice sort of size bracket where it's, you know, you're still getting a lot in there, but it's not like putting everything in one. Yeah.
So I have capsule. 4 terabyte hard drives, or 5, I think maybe. And then I also, whenever actually I met people along the way that were going to Europe or flying somewhere else, I would ask them if I bought a hard drive, a cheap hard drive, copied everything onto it, if they could take it with them. So there was
actually a lot of your stuff kind of sitting in various parts of the world right now.
It's all scattered around the world. Yeah, actually, when I was in Zambia, I was rafting on the Zambezi River.
Yeah.
Right by Victoria Falls. There was a couple in my raft, and they were from Cape Town. And I started chatting to them, and I was like, actually, I have a question. If I give you a hard drive, would you take it to Cape Town for me and keep it safe? And they said, yeah, sure. So I bought a hard drive from a shop, 4 terabyte hard drive, like one of the cheap ones, copied all my Zambia footage and gave it to her, and she took it with her to Cape Town. And when I got here, she gave it back to me. Yeah, but it's just a contingency. Like, what if something happens? What if someone steals my bike? What if, I don't know, my bike falls into a river? I don't know. What if something happens? The most important thing I have is my footage, because that is irreplaceable. So I had to make a plan and try to think of those scenarios and just make backup copies and send them to different countries, because the cloud unfortunately was not an option. It's just the internet was too slow. So you still have the full copies with you at all times, but you sent extra backup copies. Okay, so it's not like you took the only copy and sent it with a stranger. No. Okay, I always had all my footage at once. Like all my footage I always had with me, but I had backups scattered around the world. That's a pretty super strategy. Yeah. That's quite nice. Hopefully the Starlink crew can get on board and make internet transfers one day. That would have been amazing, honestly. But at the same time, I like having physical copies. Yes, as well. Yeah. Also, I mean, if you need content to actually produce stuff for, then you need to kind of have it on hand, and you can't really get internet access everywhere. For sure. At a sufficient sort of speed. You obviously now, after you finish this journey, you've grown tremendously as a creator, and your public notability has also grown a lot. So I think there are a lot of inbound opportunities that you're now being, forced to consider, both from, future adventures you can do and other things that people want from your time and all of that. How have you kind of learned to prioritize things there now? Are you having to learn how to say no more effectively? Yes. So one thing that I want people to know is that I started this journey with 2,000 followers. So like I've grown a lot in the last year and a half in terms of following, I guess. But I have been doing this for many years, like making videos. So yeah, there's a side to it that's very new, that's very exciting. But there's another side where I don't really care that much about comments or hate comments or whatever, because I just I've always learned to block it out and not really pay attention to that too much. In terms of opportunities, there's a lot of people that reach out. The most exciting part of it is being able to connect with other people that are doing really cool stuff and other creators. It's way easier, I guess, when you have social currency to be able to reach out to people and know that they're probably going to read your message or respond back to you. So it's very exciting because you now have access to a lot of really amazing people. But in terms of opportunities, there's so many things. There's so many options for the future. But I always remind myself of my values and what I care about, and just try to have that as the main priority. I'd say I love, going on adventures. I love spending time with people. I love learning about cultures and places around the world and telling stories from people around the world. And that's something that I'm going to continue doing. If a brand or a company aligns with that, then I will gladly work with them. But if it doesn't, then I'll say no, obviously.
How do you kind of decide if it aligns or not? Is it just a gut feeling about something, or?
Yeah, it is a gut feeling, but also sometimes it's just common sense. Or maybe sometimes it's just a phone call and meeting the team behind a brand and seeing like if you get along or not. If they care about your well-being, if they care about just the numbers and the followers, or if they actually care about the stories that you're trying to tell, all that matters to me. And yeah, I think a lot of it is just maybe gut feeling.
Have you experienced any sort of burnout as a creator kind of along this journey or prior to that? Or periods where you kind of felt exhausted creatively?
I have in the past when I was freelancing, and I was working also on my own videos. I also had a very toxic work situation before this journey at one point, where I was being overworked and underpaid, and I was burnt out at the end. I lost a lot of weight. Actually, my family were kind of concerned for my health, even though I thought I was fine, but I had lost a lot of weight, and I think it was just a lot of stress and all that accumulating over time. And then I just had to take a break, and I had to really think about what fulfills me and what makes me happy and what can I do to align with that again. And when that happened, actually, I decided to, that's a funny story, actually. I was burnt out and I was really lost in life and stuff. And then I decided to go sailing with like a random guy that I met on...
I was going to ask about this. You went on a Polynesian sailing boat.
Yeah, that was like so spontaneous.
Where was this again?
It was off the coast of Portugal. So I was burnt out and I decided I need to do something different. I need to go on an adventure just for myself. I found this boat.
How did you find the boat? There's
a website called Crewbay, and you can find crew members as a boat owner, or you can find boats as a crew member. So I was just like, yeah, I'm looking for... No, actually, it was the first boat that I found. And I was like, wow, that looks so cool. Yeah, I'm going to join. I messaged him and I went. And I ended up spending 3 weeks on that sailing boat. And I was just learning something new. Obviously, I'd never sailed before. I just was,
Did you have any kind of...
Zero.
So no boating experience?
Zero, nothing. Wow. And I loved it. And it was amazing because I was out in nature. I was, it was amazing. It was like, it was one of the best things I did until then, like sailing off the coast of Portugal on a traditional Polynesian wooden boat. Like, it's like out of a movie. It felt like a movie for me. And I was filming the whole thing. And at the end of the journey, I got back to Lisbon and I had 150 euros on my bank account. I didn't have enough money to fly home, but I was so content. I was so happy because I felt so aligned with what I wanted to do. It's like, go on adventures and tell stories of fascinating people and places and be able to capture it and share it. So I had filmed this. I had to edit. I hadn't edited anything. And I had no money. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I was so happy and so content. And I think that was the moment where I decided, okay, I need to continue doing this, more of this. Because I felt I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel like anxious. I didn't feel like, it's kind of like it cured my burnout in a way. It's like doing things that really align with what I wanted to do.
Okay. So those were sort of the initial sparks that obviously led to the confidence to go into the Project Africa sort of initiative. I dare ask, is there anything planned for the future, adventure travel wise?
I have a lot of ideas. Nothing concrete yet, because I do want to finish this stage. Like, I want to finish Project Africa properly and share all the videos. And
is that just wrapping up all the actual storytelling?
Basically, all the post-production. Okay. I want to finish all the post-production. It's going to take a few months until at least early next year. That's basically what I'm going to be doing. I want to continue, staying active and doing lots of things on the side, which I'm probably going to be sharing on my social media. But in terms of new adventures and new YouTube videos, I'm not going to be filming much over the next year, over the rest of this year. I have ideas. I really want to sail to Madagascar. So I'm thinking of coming back to Cape Town, maybe do a little expedition.
From Cape Town to Madagascar. It's quite a gnarly route as well.
I don't know. I don't know anything about it. It's just a little seed in my head. I honestly haven't really done my research, and I probably won't until the future.
I think it would be
if anyone watching is a sailor or just wants to tag along for an adventure, just like message me.
No, I think that would be absolutely
because I don't know anything about sailing. I mean, I did that sailing trip for 3 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
but I still don't know anything about sailing.
How are the conditions?
Very smooth. There was not a lot of wind.
Okay.
So it was just like waiting around for wind most of the time.
I think the Cape Town
it's going to be very different.
The Cape Town Sea might be a little bit more rough and tumble.
But that's a challenge I'm excited for. I think
amazing.
Being able to sail along the Garden Route and to Mozambique off the coast all the way. And Madagascar is such a fascinating place as well. I've always wanted to go. Maybe I'll spend a few months there. I don't know. I have so many ideas. I also would love to go around India because my mom is Indian and I haven't really explored India as an adult. But I think I would love to get a tuk-tuk and convert it to electric and then just go around India in a tuk-tuk and just explore. That would be so fun.
Why convert it to an electric?
Because tuk-tuks are just so loud, you know?
Okay, so you want to be
I
silent.
want something more silent. That's one thing that I loved about the bike, like cycling, was it was very quiet. I have had people ask me, would you want to do it in a motorbike? I think yes, because you can go faster, but it's just so loud.
Okay.
I like the silence of being, it's very meditative. That's why I would want to convert it to electric. Also for the environment, I guess it's like more eco-friendly.
Well, fantastic.
Lots of ideas.
Well, I cannot wait to see the rest of the content that comes out after your very grueling, but hopefully exciting post-production schedule that you've got coming up. For everything you have shared so far, thank you from an admirer of the work. It's inspiring and really, really wonderful to see, and I can't wait to sort of see the rest of it. And thank you for joining me here for a little bit of a chat as well. It's remarkable to hear about your story and everything you've got planned for the future.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm super excited as well for the next chapters, and I'm very, very honored to have done my first podcast with you.
Is this the first actual podcast?
Yeah, it's the first podcast I've been on.
Oh, what a win. Okay.
Yeah, so thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, to everyone who's watched us as well, thank you very much for putting up with my mumbling and rambling. And yeah, thank you, Flo, for joining us.
Thank you.